Hey folks, we're doing the Investigating Chemical Changes and Changes in Energy Lab for Module 4. The first step in the procedure is to make observations about the appearance of the different substances that we will be using. So let's look at those chemicals now. We have calcium chloride in this container. You can see that it is a white solid and that it kind of looks like little pellets. So it almost looks like little styrofoam beads maybe, although you can hear from the noise that they're clearly heavier and more substantial than styrofoam beads. The next substance that we have is sodium bicarbonate. It is also a white solid, but you can see it's more like a fine powder, very fine, almost maybe looks like powdered sugar, much quieter. Phenol red is a red liquid. It is colored, but it is clear. It's see-through. It's not cloudy. You can see through it. Whenever we use calcium chloride, we're going to use 1 teaspoon. Whenever we use sodium bicarbonate, we're going to use half of a teaspoon. Whenever we use phenol red, we'll use about 5 mils of it. And similarly for water, if we use water, then we will use 5 mils of water. And of course, water is clear and colorless. So the initial reaction mixture that we are supposed to set up combines calcium chloride, sodium bicarbonate, and phenol red. And we don't want these chemicals to mix until we are ready to make our observations. So I'm going to keep them in separate parts of the plastic bag until I'm ready to mix them. I've added all 3 chemicals to my bag and they're in separate compartments, so they have not yet mixed. I've tried to squeeze as much air as possible out of the Ziploc before sealing it shut, but it is completely sealed shut. And now I'll try to mix all 3 chemicals together at once. I can hear fizzing. And when I touch the bag, it's quite warm to the touch. Phenol red, of course, had the red color, but that's not the color I see in the bag anymore. Very warm to the touch, much warmer than I saw before. Also, if I lay this flat, this appears much more inflated than it was at the start. I had squeezed as much of the air out as possible, so this seems to be kind of inflating like a pillow. So think about what you see, what you hear, and what I described that you could feel. You should have at least 5 observations from this chemical reaction. Now that the bubbles have subsided a little bit and you can see inside, think about whether the liquid is clear or cloudy. Obviously it has a color to it, but is it something that you can see through, or is it opaque? All right. So for the next portion of the lab, on the table, for the data collection table, before we move on to the next section, you need to think about what questions you want to ask. So think about each of your 5 observations and ask yourself what causes that observation. A sample question would be, which chemicals are responsible for causing the color change from red to yellow? But of course, you need to come up with more questions than that because you made more observations than just the color change. Now we're going to look at our designed experiments. So I'm going to do some pairwise tests, just testing 2 chemicals at a time. So for my first test, I'm going to try calcium chloride and sodium bicarbonate. I've added my 2 chemicals to the plastic bag. I've squeezed out as much air as possible and I've sealed the bag. So now I will try to mix all the chemicals together at once. I don't hear anything. I started with 2 white solids, and when I look in the bag, I seem to still have these 2 white solids. Remember, the calcium chloride looked like styrofoam beads, and I still see some styrofoam beads in there. The sodium bicarbonate looked like a white powder, and I still see white powder in there. It just looks like it's mixed together. I'll just lay it flat and see if I've got a pillow effect going on. No, I do not. The next pairwise test I'm going to do is between calcium chloride and phenol red. Okay, so I have my calcium chloride and my phenol red in the Ziploc bag, which I've squeezed the extra air out of and have sealed it shut. And now I'll mix the chemicals together all at once. Well, this feels very hot against my fingers. This feels very hot against my fingers. I can hold it, but I wouldn't want to take a bath in water that temperature. It would be too hot. I don't hear anything unless I'm kind of stirring it. We do seem to have less than a teaspoon of solid here. I can definitely still see the white beads, but there's not a whole teaspoon of white beads in here anymore. They seem to be kind of dissolving, disappearing somehow. I feel like the red is less see-through. The liquid is less see-through than it was before. It's a little more chalky, a little more opaque. For the next reaction, I'm going to try calcium chloride with water. Okay, again, this reaction mixture feels very hot. see bubbles. I'm not hearing anything when I'm not stirring. The clear water isn't clear anymore. It's more milky in color. It's more opaque. The calcium chloride beads seem to be getting smaller. Again, when I lay it down, I don't see the bag swelling up like a pillow. I forgot to test that for the last one. Here you go. That bag also did not swell up like a pillow for the mixture of calcium chloride with phenol red. But our focus this time on the calcium chloride with water. The next combination we'll test is sodium bicarbonate with phenol red. I've squeezed out as much air as possible and sealed the bag. And now we'll mix them together at once. Ooh, it's cold. Much colder than the, not much colder, slightly colder than it was to begin with. I don't see any powder here. But the red liquid isn't as translucent as before. It's more opaque. It seems to be kind of cloudy. So this feels cold. Looks cloudy. I lay it flat. Not puffing up like a pillow. The next chemical combination I'm going to try is sodium bicarbonate, but with water this time. I squeezed out as much air as possible and sealed the bag with sodium bicarbonate and water, mixing it together. Again, I can feel a change in temperature. This is colder than when I first started mixing it. I don't see the powder really anymore, but the water definitely doesn't look like water anymore. It's opaque, it's cloudy. Let's see if the bag is puffing up at all. No. I'm not hearing anything. I haven't heard anything since that very first reaction we tried. The next chemical combination I'm going to try, you don't actually need to try. You should be able to tell from reading the background information why testing this chemical combination is not necessary. I'm going to keep the water separated from the phenol red. Squeezing out the air and sealing the bag and mixing it together. I don't feel any difference in temperature. I don't see any bubbles. I don't see any inflation of the bag. The color is perhaps a slightly paler shade of red, but not surprising if we've watered down the liquid. The next three-way comparison we will try is between calcium chloride, water, and phenol red. Seal the bag shut. Try to mix it all together at once. Water, phenol red, and calcium chloride. This bag feels hot. Again, kind of borderline uncomfortably hot. I don't see bubbling. I feel like there are fewer beads of calcium chloride than there were when I started. It seems to be disappearing, dissolving away. In fact, I'll try to knock down. There's some beads that came up, but it was almost all gone away. There are a few beads stuck up top where I can't mix them, but there aren't any beads in this bottom corner of the bag anymore. Maybe one or two. So this disappeared more completely than before. I feel like this was more see-through, less cloudy, more see-through, more translucent than last time. I'll compare this to when we just did phenol red with calcium chloride. You can still see pellets in this one, but no pellets in this one. The one with pellets looks cloudy. You can't see my finger through it. The one without pellets, you can see my finger through it. The last three-way comparison, or three-way reaction, three-way experiment will be between sodium bicarbonate, phenol red, and water. I've squeezed out as much air as possible and sealed the bag. This is sodium bicarbonate with phenol red and distilled water. I'll try to mix it all together at once. All right, this feels cold again. I don't see any powder anymore, but the solution, the liquid seems to be cloudy. I don't see through it very well. I'll compare this to the last time we had phenol red and sodium bicarbonate together in the same bag. This is just sodium bicarbonate with phenol red. This is sodium bicarbonate with phenol red and water. Both of them, when I leave them alone for a period of time, do have kind of a collection of powder at the bottom. So if I stop stirring, I get a little bit of a collection of powder at the bottom. But this is my most recent reaction mixture: sodium bicarbonate, phenol red, and distilled water. Again, no inflation of the bag and no noise to be heard. The last combination we're going to try is with calcium chloride, sodium bicarbonate, and water. So this will be like our initial reaction, but instead of using phenol red, we're going to use water. Okay, my bag contains calcium chloride, sodium bicarbonate, and distilled water. And I've squeezed out excess air and closed the bag. I'll try to mix it all together as quickly as possible. You definitely hear bubbles. Hopefully you can see them as well. I hear fizzing. The bag feels warm. You can feel the bubbles as well. The bag feels warm. If I lay it flat, I can see that it is puffing up like a pillow. It's a little hard to tell from the bubbles here, but it does appear to be opaque in color, or opaque in terms of not letting light pass through it. It's not clear like the water was before. I'm going to compare this to my original reaction mixture. Also opaque instead of clear. All right. So those observations should give you the information that you need to answer the post-lab questions. I hope this helped.